Imagine if the population of Santa Barbara decreased by 40% or more within a couple of years due to COVID. For some endangered species, their population has taken the same hit or worse. Many people know that humans have done quite a bit of damage to the environment. According to the World Wildlife Foundation, humans have caused an extinction rate between 1 and 10,000 times what is natural. That is crazy. As more and more foundations dedicate themselves to studying and preventing the endangerment and extinction of species, the more we learn about the damage that we have done. The California condor, however, is a glimmer of hope, exemplary of how humans might be the only way to undo the damage that humans have done. From only 22 California condors in the entire world in the 80s, their numbers have soared to over 500 today. Conservation efforts proved effective in a situation we thought might be hopeless. Have you ever seen an eagle soaring through the clouds or a hawk riding on tailwinds and just been in awe at the majesty and beauty of those birds? Well, a California condor would put the wingspan of an eagle to shame. California condors are a huge bird and demand your attention when they're in the air. They place in the top 15 birds in the world for largest wingspan, getting up to 9.5 feet. I am 5'4", and that is a big bird. Weighing up to 20 pounds, they're 10 times as large as your common red-tailed hawk, with a wingspan 2 to 3 times as large. They're the largest land bird in North America, and they're hard to miss when you see them. Nowadays, you won't see a California condor without one of their identification tags. These tags are called field tags, and they serve many purposes. Not only do they identify exactly what condor you're looking at, but they also help to identify the age. The smaller the number, example 1 or 2 or 3, the older the bird is because the longer it has been in the program. Scientists and conservationists are able to better keep track of condor populations, locations, and habits with these tags. While these are no birds of prey meant to be killing machines, they harbor other very impressive features. Aside from their size, they are amazing travelers. They often fly at thousands of feet in the air and go for hours and miles without a single flap of their wings. They glide at 55 miles an hour or faster. In fact, their wings have the tips upturned a little bit. Have you ever noticed that planes have their wings modeled that way too? It makes them more aerodynamic. The same stretch of land that would take us humans weeks or months to traverse only takes condors hours. Oftentimes, California condors live around 50 years or longer, making them one of the longest living raptors in the world. And yes, you heard me right, condors are raptors. They're very social birds, oftentimes flying together, perching together and absorbing the sun, and even absorbing the carrion that they find with other condors, and sometimes ravens and other scavengers. These birds are iconic on the Pacific Coast landscape and are a symbol in many parts of California. As very iconic and hard to miss birds, it's no wonder people started to notice when their population took a rapid decline. You've probably heard of the human's effect on populations before. We've driven animals like the western black rhino, the northern white rhino, and the Spix macaw, just to name a couple, extinct in the last couple of years. That's crazy. Have you heard of how we drove the California condor population almost into the single digits not too long ago? Even better, have you heard of how we've driven it back into the hundreds today? California condors, to no surprise, started suffering as soon as humans came into the picture. Immediately with humans came territory change. They used to live all along the western coast of America, as well as, including California, Arizona, Utah, Texas, New York, Florida, and even parts of Mexico and Canada. Kind of a random spread. Now, their territory is only limited to Southern California and parts of Arizona and Utah. As people settled and expanded west, they diminished the California condor territory to a small fraction of its former size. It still hasn't recovered. Humans in their territory have had direct and indirect influences on these birds. Condors were poisoned, hunted, had their eggs stolen, and also suffered loss of food sources from human hunting. Pesticides and environmental pollutants inadvertently poisoned these birds through the carcasses they were eating. Because they are scavengers, they ate carrion left behind by human hunters. Not only did they suffer secondhand poisoning from pesticides that the animals came in contact with, but also, more concerningly, lead poisoning. Lead poisoning is the largest contributor in condor deaths. While trash consumption is the leading kill of the hatchlings, lead ammunition poisons the meat that the condors consume and is responsible for about 73% of the deaths in adult condors. Though there are no good guesses for the California condor population numbers predating human interference, we know that they had a large territory beforehand. There had to have been thousands of birds to span that many states in the U.S., as well as parts of Canada and Mexico. However, it became constricted to just Southern California in the 50s. With the decreases in food, poisoning, egg stealing, and territory takeover, California condors were taken note of as a declining species. The killing of these birds and stealing of their eggs was banned in 1905, but that in no way stopped their population decline. When their population dropped to 40 in 1975, the California Condor Recovery Team was formed and the first plan was put into action. However, the numbers continued to decline after this, down to 22 birds in the entire world in 1982, and a staggering less than 10 wild birds in 1985. We almost drove their population into the single digits. 2 years later, they decided to capture the last wild bird and put it into captivity in order to further push rehabilitation efforts. These magnificent birds suffered huge losses due to human influence. Whether we were intentionally hurting them or not, we had a drastic effect on them. Other people started to see the declines in this bird's population, and they knew they had to do something about it. How many of you have heard people joking about rabbit reproduction rates? Okay, pretty much all of us. If rabbits were to go near extinct, it probably wouldn't be too hard to bring their populations back up, would it? Well, with California condors, it's a little harder to create an upwards population curve. Condors are tricky to rehabilitate for multiple reasons. They only average one chick every 3 years, meaning just to keep flat population, it would take 6 years for a California condor couple to produce 2 babies to replace them. Furthermore, a chick takes 6 years or longer to reach maturity. They also only have one chick at a time, so the cycle of a California condor growing and reproducing means 6 years till maturity and then 3 years in between every chick they have. If we want to create upwards population, they need to have at least 3 chicks. That means too many years. In 1980, the major conservation project was started. Efforts included putting radio transmitters on the condor's wings and collecting and hatching wild eggs in captivity. In 1987, they brought the last wild bird into captivity to help further push rehabilitation efforts. The next year, in 1988, they had their first successful egg hatch produced entirely from captive mating and incubation. This was the start of the turnaround. In 1992, they started to release the captive bred birds into the wild. 9 years later, in 2001, 58 California condors lived out of captivity, and the birds began to reproduce and make their first nesting attempts back out of the wild. Now the birds are starting to thrive out there. In 2006, a mere 15 years ago, California had its first recorded wild California condor nest in over a century. This was yet another crucial turning point in their conservation efforts. The birds began to reproduce in the wild without human interference. Nowadays, you can even watch live streams from cameras placed at California condor nests. You can see the direct influence of their recovery, watching the eggs hatch and watching their parents care for them. I highly recommend watching them because they are pretty cute when you catch them at the right moments. While it was a long and hard road to recovery for these birds, and one that we're still not done with, Human influence was able to save these birds from human influence. It's incredible to watch these birds start to fill up the skies on their own again, and it gives us hope for other suffering populations in the wild. When human influence brought the California condor to a small percentage of its former territory and an even smaller percentage of its former population, human influence had to be used to bring them back to thriving in the wild. Human efforts are the best undoing to human destruction. The species we have brought to near extinction need our dedication and our time and our strongest efforts. Going forward, we must work not only at stopping the spread of endangerment, but also preventing future harm. If we don't want to continue seeing our world diminish before our very eyes, we need to do more about it. We can make change if we really try, and we can make our future generations proud of the conservational efforts that we start making today.